So we're pretty familiar with this parable, right? Maybe, maybe not. I want to read for you another scripture which is not familiar to us. In fact, you may have never heard it before. I'm sure you've never heard a sermon about it before. But it was one that was very familiar to Jesus' time and culture. It's still very prevalent in much of the culture of the Middle East today. It comes from Exodus, one of the 5 books of the law, 21st chapter, verses 18 through 21. Now, contrast this with what you just heard. If someone has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey his father and mother, who does not heed them when they discipline him, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him, bring him out to the elders of his town at the gate of that place. They shall say to the elders of the town, "This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us. He is a glutton and a drunkard." Then all the men of the town shall stone him to death. Right? And we just heard a story about a son who was rebellious. And the rightful action of the father would have been to turn him over. To ask for one's inheritance while the parent was still alive was the height of rebellion. It was an honor culture. The father was king in the family. Now, as we read it from Western ears, we think the father was gracious, though maybe a little soft-headed. He gave in to his son. But now you can see how he is acting way outside of expectations. No one in the village would have understood. They would have thought he's crazy. But he can do what he wants. Now, first, the premise of the story was unheard of. When Jesus told this story, they would have thought, what in the world is he talking about? That could never happen. It simply did not take place in that culture. The son asked for his inheritance. It's as if he said to his father, "I wish you were dead. I wish you were dead." It was an insult of the highest order. Either his father or the community, in great anger, would have beat the son, if not killed him. Dr. Kenneth Bailey, who taught for years at the Near Eastern School of Theology in Beirut, writes of knowing of only one case in modern village life where this kind of request was made. An older son asked the father to divide the family's inheritance so he could have it then. The father, in great anger, took a stick and drove him out of the house, never to let him return. And all the neighbors in the village applauded. You beginning to get a sense of the radicalness of this story? If, however, it might have happened and the boy made it safely out of town, upon his return to the village, hostilities from the villagers would have been huge, especially when they learned that he lost all that he had to non-Israelites. I mean, that's like piling it on. Now, this is important to know as we see the father running to meet the son. We have a video about that. Now, as Westerners, we see this as kind of the father's great love for his son. He's lost and now he's come back, and so the father runs to embrace him, welcome him back. Right? And undoubtedly he loves his son. But he's running to the edge of the village to get there before the villagers get there. To preempt a hostile village reaction to his son. If they get there first, they're going to beat him. And so as we see that, he loves his son so much. He wants to protect his son, and that's why he runs. That's why he does the unthinkable. By kissing and embracing his son, he is proclaiming to this village that his son is under his own protection. And none of the villagers would dishonor that. They would accept that. And another thing we need to know in the story is that by the villagers being present at this party, They would have signaled their acceptance of the Father's wish to bring him back into his family and into the village. If they go to the party, they're saying, okay, we accept that. Now, a little later in the story, the elder son seriously insults his father by not going to the party. He refuses to go in. He says, what are you thinking, Dad? You're having a party for him? Don't you remember what he did? And so here we have a son who seems to be evil, who finds reconciliation, and one who appears to be good, who, well, we just don't know. There's no end to the story. Will he be reconciled or will he not? That's the choice for us. Will we be reconciliated with God, or will we say, hey, that's not fair? We deserve and we want what we want. And we don't like your grace for all those other people out there. Now, we really need all of that background to understand the extravagance, the craziness of the Father. Henri Nouwen makes that point when he writes, "This story is not easy for me to grasp. In a world that constantly compares people, ranking them as more or less intelligent, more or less attractive, more or less successful, it is not easy to really believe in a love that does not do the same thing." We do that subtly. I mess up and, oh, how could God love me? I'm not worthy. Because we think love should be fair, right? And especially fair toward me. Love is not love if it is not extravagant. That's what this story tells us. Love is not love if it is not extravagant. Now, we in the church often do nice things. Right? And that's fine. And we call that love. But they're just nice things. It's not really love. Love, to be loved, has to be extravagant. It's not enough just to open the door for Brad when he comes. Or say nice things to Mary. Love, to be loved, is extravagant. Now, if you didn't know this story, and this son comes back home, what would you expect the father to say to the son? If you were an older brother or an older brother sympathizer, you would probably expect the father to say something like, "Yes, Howard, we're glad to have you back home. Now let's get rid of that earring, go get something to eat, and let's fill out those forms for law school." Right? You see the difference? See what love is really about? That doesn't happen. There's a party thrown. Why? Because that's what the Father wants to do. There's great joy in the return. Now, we really don't need to spend too much time with the younger brother. He takes what he wants, he does what he wants, and he comes back because everything's falling apart. But I think we need to say two things about him. In brief. One, we are all like the younger brother sometimes. So if you want everything to be fair, you need to remember we're all the younger brother sometimes. Some of us more than others, but we won't get into that. The second is, that's a safe place to start knowing the extravagant love of the Father. If you know you're going to be loved and forgiven, it's easier to admit that you're flawed. We can understand the older brother. It wasn't fair. He stayed and did all the work. Younger brother went out and blew all of this and then came back. Without the older brother, much of the work of the farm would not have gotten done. In the church, without the older brothers and sisters, those who come out of duty, more, but that sense of duty and I have to do this and it's important that I do that. Without those older brothers and sisters in the church, not much would get done. That's the reality. But God's grace goes even to those who come in late, who don't do much. That's what the story's about. When the younger brother came back, the older brother said, this son of yours, he doesn't even say his brother's name, this son of yours, he squandered his existence. Then he comes crawling back, and you, Father, treat him like a returning astronaut. That's what it says in one of those Bibles, modern translation. But you see, the Father can do whatever he wants, and he wants to love. John Wesley was a classic older brother. Everything he did was methodical. But on one occasion, at least one, he showed the extravagant kind of love of a loving father. John Wesley wrote journals all the time. And out of one of his journals, he told about a time when he came to America. He said, I taught one school in Savannah, and Mr. Delamont taught another. Mr. Delamont told him that in his class there was a problem. See, some of the children came without shoes and socks. They didn't have them. And that those kids that came with shoes and socks made fun of those kids without. And Mr. Delamont tried to put a stop to it, and he could while he was in class. But when school was over, they started making fun of the kids without shoes and socks anymore. And he didn't know what to do. He tried everything. And so he talked to Wesley and told him about it. Wesley said, I told him I thought I could cure it. And added, if you will take care of my school next week, I'll take care of yours and try. Which he readily consented to do. So on Monday morning, John Wesley came to school without shoes and socks. He said, the children looked with surprise, first at me and then with each other. He said, I took no notice, but kept them to their work. He said, I soon observed that those who were without stockings and shoes began to gather courage, to get an air of confidence, because the Master was on their side. I love that phrase, because the Master is on their side. He wrote, I did the same every day during the week. Before the end of the week, several of those who used to wear stockings and shoes came to school without them. Thus, he says, the evil was securely cured. I like that about John Wesley. He captured the God who comes running. Tom Prince talked to his congregation, and he told them about a nationwide survey that asked, what word or phrase would you most like to hear uttered to you sincerely? Our number one answer is, I love you. I love you. The number two answer, survey says, something you want said to you. You are forgiven. I love you is number one. Number two is you are forgiven. Number three, if you get this, I'll give you $5. Number three, I'm going to say it quick. I'm sorry. Dinner is ready. Dinner is ready. Good news for today. To all of God's children, this forgiving, loving God looks you directly in the eyes and says to you, I love you, you are forgiven. And then guides us to the communion table